All right, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. We'll start here shortly. And today, what we're going to do is go over understanding underwriting and the method behind the madness. So, can you guys see my screen where it says lunch and learning training?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. And you guys can hear me loud and clear. So, awesome. So, pretty much with underwriting, what it is, it's basically the process that insurance companies use to assess the risk of insuring an applicant for insurance. So, that could be health insurance, it could be property and casualty, and for us, it's life insurance. So, our goal as insurance agents is to match the client, our prospect, our applicant accurately with the right insurance company that will give the client the best rates with the best coverage. And that's most important in what we do, especially when we're in telesales, because you don't want some experienced agent to come behind you, write that business with level coverage, and you basically wrote them guaranteed issue or graded because you didn't know how to successfully underwrite an application to get level business. And when you do this successfully every time, the more level business you write, the more commission it is for you. And when your client is happy because they do qualify for the best rates and that day one coverage that everybody wants, now they're happy with you and they'll even refer their family and friends to you, which means even more business and more happy clients. So that is our goal as agents when it comes to underwriting. Now, how do we complete the goal? Number one, you want to ask open-ended questions. Don't ask, oh, are you a diabetic? And then you leave it at that. You want to ask, oh, when are you on insulin? How long have you been on insulin? By chance, do you know how many units you have to take a day? Do you have to take any other prescriptions with your insulin, like gabapentin, pregabalin, or Lyrica? Because that'll let you know that person has diabetic neuropathy, and that can make a big difference in getting it an approval where it comes back as level versus graded or ROP. You want to use insurance toolkits. No knock for the toolkits that they have in our CRM, but toolkits is a game changer because it does all of the hard work for underwriting for you. Now, is it 100% accurate? Absolutely not. With no technology is ever going to be 100% accurate. But about 90% of the time, it is accurate. And I use it all the time. I've been doing this for 12 years. I've tried a lot of different quoting software, and toolkits by far is number one. I'm a firm believer that is like pen to your paper. And we'll go over toolkits and making sure you put in the information correctly with that as well. Now, as far as the madness behind toolkits giving you the outcome, it's all based on the carrier applications. And pretty much you can even look at the applications and see how the outcomes play out based on the application. So what we're going to do next is go over some core carriers. We're going to look at their applications, and then we're going to see some niches that they have. So our first one, this is my favorite carrier, American Amicable. So I know some people, they like Mutual of Omaha, but they tend to be a little too nitpicky for me. And therefore, I go with a company that even though they don't have the best rates, they are easy to work with in the front end and the back end of an application. So for example, with American Amicable, their niches is cigar smokers. They can get non-smoking rates or non-tobacco rates. Healthy smokers typically have the best rates. They even beat out a lot of times Mutual of Omaha's smoking rates or tobacco rates. Recent hospital stays. As long as you're not in a hospital when you're doing that application, you can get immediate coverage with American Amicable because they don't ask that question. And then we'll go over nitro and Narcan, and then we'll also go over COPD, not using any inhalers. But let me show you their application. So this is kind of small. I'm not sure if you can see this, but what you can do, and let me share my other screen here. All right, so I'm going to move this over so you can see. Okay, so over here, we have Agent Chat, and I can go into resources, look up American Amicable or AMAM, and I always click on this top one because I want to see all the topics. And then I'm going to scroll down to the one that says American Amicable. I take a look, and then I go down here where the paper applications are. And then I'm going to select Senior Choice because that's for the people that we want to do applications for that are over the age of 50. So here are our health questions. When I first started, I always thought you had to answer no in order to get approved for every one of these health questions. Where in actuality, you don't have to you don't have to answer no to all the health questions in order to get approved. However, if you have to answer yes in certain sections, that will lower how much you qualify for, as well as your payments. It will dictate how much your payments will be. So, for example, these first 3 questions are what they call automatic knockout questions, where if you have to answer yes to any of these questions above this line, then that is going to be an automatic knockout. And my apologies, my daughter is calling. I'm just going to let her know I'm doing a training. So one moment. Okay. All right. So these are all knockout questions. So if they're currently in a hospital, that would be a knockout. If they're currently in a nursing facility, knockouts. Even down here, if they had an organ transplant or kidney dialysis, knockouts. AIDS, age-related complex, any immune deficiency disorder, or tested positive for HIV, automatic knockouts. Now, questions in this section would be return of premium if anyone has to answer yes to these questions. So that could be systemic lupus, stroke, hepatitis in the last 2 years, any pending tests, anyone in the last 2 years who's used illegal drugs, alcohol. And I laugh at this one because I had a really healthy 74-year-old. When I asked them this question about have you used illegal drugs in the last 2 years, he said yes. I was thinking to myself, what in the world? You're 74, you're using illegal drugs? But he said, yes, I used cocaine on my birthday. I was like, but anyway, he would be someone where I would change to another carrier, because if he has to answer yes here, then it's going to be return of premium, which is a waiting period. Now, at the bottom, if someone has to answer yes, then this would be graded, where they would give partial face amount in the first 2 to 3 years if they have to answer yes to these questions. Now, you got to look at the question to see how they ask the question. So on my screen where I showed you about the niches for American Amicable, I put non-smoker that have not used any type of inhalers, yet they've been diagnosed with COPD. So let's look at this right here. In the last 3 years, have you been diagnosed or treated or hospitalized for, and then right here, or taken medication in any form And then they have right here for COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. Every now and then you'll find someone. Number one, they got to be a non-smoker. If they're a smoker, then automatically it's going to be a return of premium, and that's not going to work. But for a non-smoker, like I had yesterday, she was diagnosed with COPD over 5 years ago. The doctor told her she had it, but she has not been prescribed any inhalers. She's not on any oxygen, and she's a non-smoker. So she would qualify for immediate coverage, even though this question asked about COPD in the last 3 years. So because she was not medically diagnosed in the last 3 years, she hasn't been treated, she hasn't been hospitalized for COPD, and has not taken medication for COPD, now she can answer no to that question, and now she can qualify for immediate coverage. Okay, so any questions regarding that? All right, so I'm going to change back over, and then now what we're going to do is talk about Narcan with American Amicable, because I saw someone post this in our chat. And with Narcan, that is basically an overdose emergency pill. American Medical Association nowadays, they are going more to if you have a high type of prescription or pain medicine that has a high chance of you getting addicted, a lot of doctors will now prescribe Narcan or naloxone as a form of emergency treatment. A lot of times people get it, but they never use it. So if you put in the notes that this client was prescribed pain medicine, and as part of the new American guidelines, the doctor prescribed this Narcan in the event of an emergency, your client, and you note that your client never had to take it, never had any issues with abuse or drug abuse, then you put that in the notes. And then a lot of times, if there are no other health issues or prescriptions that's causing a problem, a lot of times that application will be approved with American Amicable. So this is the reason why I like working with them, because you can put notes in there in the bottom of the application after the prescriptions come up, or after something triggers the application where it can't get an automatic decline. You can put notes in the at the end of the application, let an underwriter review it. And a lot of times, if you put the right notes and it's not anything that's not correct, that your client left out, a lot of times you can get your application approved if they are taking, or if they've been prescribed Narcan but never had to take it. So any questions regarding American Amicable? Any other niches you guys found with American Amicable? Any questions about how the application is laid out? All right, so we're going to move to the next carrier. So our next core carrier is SBLI. And they're really great because a lot of these niches down here for other carriers would cause a graded or a decline. So they too will give you day one immediate coverage with COPD for people who have COPD. But lupus is one where a lot of times people will get declines, as well as people with kidney disease but not on dialysis. So we are going to go and look at their application. So their application is a little different than American Amicable's. So this looks a little small. I'm not sure if you can see it. So what I'm going to do is share my screen, my other screen, so we can pull up their application. So again, I go into agent chat, type in SBLI. I always click on this first one so I can see all of them. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing because it auto-corrected. There we go. So now I see SBLI FEX. I click on that. I scroll down, and then I look for their paper application, which is right here. Click on that. And then once I scroll down, here are their health questions. So with Part A, if you have to answer yes to these questions, with the exception of the COVID question, most of these would cause the application to be declined. So for example, here, have you tested positive for COVID-19? If you answer yes because they currently have been tested with COVID-19 and it came back positive, then this would be declined. However, have you tested for COVID-19 and you've put yes, then it's going to automatically ask, have you tested positive for COVID-19 in the last 30 days? You answer no there. Have you been hospitalized for complications of COVID-19 in the last 90 days? You answer no there. And then the application will still be approved as preferred or standard. This section right here is going to be their modified. So if you have to answer yes here, then this would be the modified. And then section C is going to be standard coverage, where it will still give you day one immediate coverage, but the rates are going to be a little bit higher than the preferred. The preferred is if they can answer no to all the health questions with the exception of the COVID-19 question. So if they haven't had COVID-19 in the last 90 days and haven't had any complications in the last 90 days with this, then it would be approved as preferred. So down here, these are the health questions that will still give you day one immediate coverage if someone has to answer yes. So if you notice down here, anyone who has chronic kidney disease or COPD without oxygen use would get standard rates. Anyone with systemic lupus, standard rates. Parkinson's, multiple sclerosis, sickle cell anemia, standard rates. Now, the one for bipolar and schizophrenia, that would give you standard rates. However, we do have some other carriers that would give better rates than SBLI's standard. So that's theirs. And with SBLI, again, some of their niches is kidney disease with no dialysis, systemic lupus, COPD with no oxygen use, hepatitis C, epilepsy, bipolar, and schizophrenia. So that's their niche. So any questions regarding SBLI? Okay, so we're going to move on to Royal Neighbors of America. So back in the day with Royal Neighbors of America, they used to have a different layout than this product that they have now called Insured Legacy. So their product before kind of had the same layout where the questions up at the top were knockout questions, then the ones in the middle were guaranteed issue, and then the one on the bottom, if someone had to answer yes there, that would be considered graded. So now they have this new Insured Legacy product where it's laid out a little different. So I'm going to pull this one so that way you can see it. Okay, so I'm going to go here again to our chat. This time I'm just going to type in RNA for Royal Neighbors of America. It'll still pop up. Here's the carrier information. And then I'm going to scroll down and they don't have an application. A sample application is pretty much their workshop, their worksheet that they use here. And because everything is electronic, I don't even think you can send this hard application in. But right here, see if I can zoom out a little bit or zoom in. Okay. So if you notice, they wanted to make sure you're aware with this new product that yes answers does not disqualify the applicant. And that's because some of these yeses will still allow a person to get standard. However, if they're on oxygen, hospitalized, receiving dialysis, require electric scooter or wheelchair for mobility, or been hospitalized in the past year for more than 2 weeks, this would be an automatic decline. If they are currently in a nursing home, hospice, receiving treatment in long-term care or memory care, automatic decline. Terminal illness, where death is expected in the next 12 months, automatic decline. Pending test results or procedures, automatic decline. However, if they are a smoker and they would answer yes here, that would still allow them to get standard or even preferred. Here in the last 10 years, these are the questions that they're looking for. Have you been diagnosed or treated for any of these? Okay. And they even give you their definition of what diagnosed means. So pretty much we have congestive heart failure, heart attack. We got bipolar, schizophrenia. So this one with that dementia or Alzheimer's, memory loss, if they have to answer yes here, then another group of questions will pop up. They're going to ask you about each one of these. And if you answer yes to dementia, Alzheimer's, or memory loss, the application will be declined. Cancer, if someone has been treated for cancer, melanoma, or a brain tumor in the last 10 years but not on treatment, they could still possibly qualify for the standard, just depending on how long that treatment was. Royal Neighbors of America, they are more black and white. So they only go with what the system kicks back out. And that's an automatic decline or an automatic approval. So tread cautiously with cancer, but most of the time, if it's close to that 5 to 10 year mark, and it's not, like a brain tumor and they still have to be on treatment, meaning maybe like a hormone pill, this application may be approved. Diabetes with insulin use. If you answer yes here to the insulin use and they have diabetic neuropathy, this application would come back as graded or even decline. So I would not write an application if my client is a diabetic on insulin, also prescribed gabapentin, Lyrica, or pregabalin. However, if someone has COPD, emphysema with no oxygen use, chronic bronchitis, lung disease, lung damage or disorder, they could qualify for standard. Same thing with kidney disease, hepatitis B or C, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, epilepsy, sickle cell, lupus, organ transplant. If they've been an organ transplant, that could still kick back a decline with them being having an organ transplant in the last 10 years. And then let's see, amputation on any body part due to complications of diabetes, that would be an automatic decline if it's been in the last 10 years. And then this one is, have you ever, so if someone has been diagnosed with HIV or AIDS, they would be automatically declined with this one. So I really like Royal Neighbors of America with their rates when it comes to someone who's a diabetic, who's not on insulin. They are taking gabapentin or Lyrica. COPDs, they have good rates just depending on their age and other prescriptions. So Royal Neighbors of America is a good option for people who have COPD, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. So I'll let you see that one because there's their niches. And also too, with Royal Neighbors of America, no matter how much you weigh, you could qualify for immediate coverage, whereas with some carriers, they ask about height and weight. So that's always a plus to use them if you have someone that is too short for their weight. So any questions regarding Royal Neighbors? Okay, so Marcus has a question. A few months ago, you saw someone mention that SBLI revoked coverage within 24 months, even though the customer was already initially approved. Is that a common practice? So it's not a common practice, but it does happen. We'll segue into this for a little bit, and then we'll go back into the slides. But a lot of carriers, when you sign their HIPAA authorization, you are signing away them to check your medical history and pharmacy records for 24 months. What SBLI does is randomly check different applications in those first 2 years to see if someone should have answered yes to one of the no questions. And if they go back and check their medical history and pharmacy records and see something didn't look right, then yes, that application can be declined. They don't just take their money, they refund all of the money back and a little bit of interest. So SBLI doesn't do it as often, but I will tell you another carrier who does, and I actually stopped working with them because of this, because I thought that was kind of shady. Amicable, it's more of a common practice for them to pull medical records in the first 2 years of having a policy. And not only in the first 2 years, what they'll do is pull it close to that 24-month contestability period. So let's say in 22 months or 23 months, they'll go back in and pull applications that were approved almost 2 years ago, pull an updated pharmacy records and medical history. And if something doesn't look right, they will cancel that policy. They'll send the money back and you have to start all over again trying to find coverage. So is it common practice with most carriers? No. Does it happen? Yes. Most of the carriers at Digital, they do it more randomly, whereas there are some carriers that do it more frequent, and Amicable is one of them. So I hope that answers your question, Marcus. So yes. I have an applicant sent back as graded when they answered yes to Part C on SBLI. Okay, so let's go back and see. All right, so this is the reason why I don't have SBLI as my number one carrier. They used to be, but with American Amicable, they have a little more flexibility where they actually let you see what is coming up in their medical file that's a discrepancy, so you can add notes in the application for a possible approval. All these other carriers, what they do is they go by what the codes that come back, and they give you scores, and with based on that score, that's how the application will get approved electronically or have an immediate approval. So once an application comes back as graded or modified, they don't say, okay, what does your client say? And we'll take a look. It's going to be an automatic decline, and now you have to pivot to a new carrier. So let me see here. Rita, if you can, you said they answered yes to the question on part C. Which question in part C was a yes? So you can come off mute.
Yeah. So thanks, Lisa.
No problem.
Couple of times it was regarding chronic or COPD and also the systemic lupus.
I understand. So with systemic lupus, sometimes people are taking treatment that will look like cancer. So if one of those prescriptions came up where it looks like cancer, then that application for systemic lupus will come back as declined. And that's why you got to be careful with trying to get all of the prescriptions, even the ones that they may go into the doctor for. So that's real important. So that's the only thing I can think of with systemic lupus. Now, for the COPD, did they ever state that they were on oxygen before?
No oxygen. At least I don't think so.
Yeah. So what could have happened is maybe they take oxygen or had it before but no longer has it. But let me see what else. So this is the only place that a COPD question is being asked. So sometimes, let's say they go to the hospital due to COPD and it was in the last 5 years. And if that hospital prescribed oxygen, now it's popping up in their medical file. And that could be why it came back other than standard. So that's the only other thing I can think of. But that's the hard part. Now, if you want to figure out why an application was declined, you can see if they will let you know if it was a prescription or it was medical. But most of the time with SBLI, they are, hard to get in contact with. They're hard to get those type of answers when it comes to outcomes. So in this case with the COPD, I may even transition to Royal Neighbors as a backup. Transamerica, that's another good one for COPD. But yeah, that one is kind of hard because I always like to lead with American Amicable because they'll actually let you see what those medical issues are or prescription issues are when you're trying to get that immediate coverage. Yeah, so if I were you, I would probably go back and ask my client what prescriptions did they used to take that they're no longer taking, or at any point have they ever had to take oxygen due to their COPD.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Yeah, because there's usually no arguing with SBLI.
It's strictly black and white.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
Oh, no problem. Were there any other questions? All right, so we're going to move on to our next carrier, which is Transamerica. Their final expense product is going to be called Express Solutions, I think it is. Let me see. Yes, Express Solutions. Their niches is COPD, direct express card holders, angina, coronary artery disease, congestive heart failure, heart attack, diabetics with complications like neuropathy. So for them to see their application, they don't show you what the Express Solutions application, what they are, because it's all electronic. So they don't have a paper application. So what I did is pretty much screenshotted all of their health questions so we can go over them one at a time. And then you can kind of see which ones will give the immediate coverage and which ones would be graded or declined. So this up here on the first part where they ask, have you ever been diagnosed, treated, or given medical advice for a condition requiring a defibrillator, Alzheimer's, amputation not due to trauma? And that's key right there. So if someone tells you they had an amputation, you would ask why and when. And if it was, let's say, a car accident, then they could qualify for Transamerica's immediate coverage. Now, if it was due to diabetic complications, the application would be declined. And then these questions here are ones that would give you knockout questions that would cause a decline. Metastatic cancer is cancer that has spread to multiple sites. Recurrent cancer is cancer that happened in one place more than once. And then they always ask cancer of multiple sites. So metastatic cancer, there are different types of cancer. So let's say it's ABC type cancer, and the ABC cancer happened in your lungs, and now the ABC cancer has spread to your stomach. That's metastatic. However, if you had ABC cancer in your lungs, but now you got through the treatment, and then some years later, they diagnosed you with skin cancer or melanoma. So that would be cancer of multiple sites. And then if you're bedridden, incarcerated, residing in a nursing home, assisted living, or long-term care facility, these would be all knockout questions. Terminal illness or being on a transplant list, suicide attempt in the last 2 years, those would be knockouts. Now, have you ever been diagnosed with cancer? If you answer yes to that one, they're going to ask some follow-up questions. And if it hasn't been, if it's been over 2 to 5 years, this just depending on the cancer and what treatment's going on, then a lot of times they can qualify for standard. Same thing with congestive heart failure, cirrhosis, lupus. It just depends on those follow-up questions and what is in their medical file. But if that's their only ailment, they could still qualify for the standard or immediate coverage. And then here, where it asks diabetes in the past 2 years with insulin treatment, they could still qualify for immediate coverage, even though they are also being treated for neuropathy, retinopathy, or nephropathy, which is kidney disease. These questions, as far as lifestyle questions, these would be, some of them would be automatic knockouts. So this tobacco question won't be an automatic knockout, but if they had a DUI or been convicted in the last 2 years or pled no contest to a felony in the last 2 years and they answer yes to that, automatic decline. Even though, let's say, they haven't used narcotics, barbiturates, amphetamines, or hallucinogens, if they are with Alcoholics Anonymous or any type of counseling for alcohol or drug use currently or in the last 2 years, if they have to answer yes there, it's an automatic decline. But pretty much the middle part here will allow more flexibility to get that immediate coverage. All right, so any questions regarding Transamerica? All right, so Mutual of Omaha, I didn't put a core carrier up there because they are not one of the core carriers, but a lot of people like using them because they are price busters. I am not a fan of selling based on price because a lot of times if you sell based on price, you're selling yourself short because you're limiting yourself to Mutual of Omaha's guidelines and extra work. So with their favorable, non-favorable pre-check indicators, that's all fine and dandy. But if your client can't do the paperwork or the DocuSign to get the approval, now you've wasted your time with Mutual of Omaha. I've seen agents that will ask a question about Mutual of Omaha when it comes to the technology. They just can't get their client to figure out how to sign the DocuSign through their end. And now they're like, oh, well, I guess I'll send a paper application. No, because now the longer the time goes by that you talk to your client without getting that approval, now you're allowing a door to be open for another agent to come in who's more experienced that will say, you know what, I'm not going to do Mutual of Omaha. Yes, they have the best rates, but I know my client isn't tech savvy. So instead, I'm going to do SBLI, do a voice authorization, or I'll do American Amicable and read the authorizations to them so I can get this immediate decline. Then your paper app shows up and your client now is saying, I already got approved. I don't need that one. So always think on your feet not to do a paper application, but to transition and pivot to something else so you can get the approval on the phone while you have them, because so many clients, even though they're your clients, will still go MIA. So yes, they have the best rates. The only time I use Mutual of Omaha is if I have a client who's super healthy, meaning they only take maybe 1 or 2 prescriptions, they're a non-smoker, and they just got quoted from another agent, something that's higher. So I'm going to write this Mutual of Omaha policy to get that approval to beat that rate. That's the only time I use them. Or if I have a client who has grandkids, great grandkids, or even little children that they are taking care of, and they want to get life insurance for them. Mutual of Omaha by far has the best rates for kid policies. They are usually about 50% less versus Gerber, Royal Neighbors of America. Globe Life is a competitor. Their rates are competitive with Mutual of Omaha. But I always am a firm believer, if you have kid policies, always do Mutual of Omaha. And then you have that name recognition. Everybody's heard of Mutual of Omaha. But one of the things I learned yesterday is if you are a marijuana smoker with Mutual of Omaha, you can get tobacco rates. I keep saying smoker, but it's really tobacco or nicotine rates. So in this business of Final Expense, you are always learning. Niches get updated. And even here, I did not know, because they're not one of my core carriers, I did not know that with Mutual of Omaha, if you are a marijuana smoker, you can get non-tobacco rates. So that's good information to know next time you get a client that's saying, oh, I smoke marijuana for medicinal purposes, and all the other carriers are going to put them with tobacco rates. If they're really healthy, you can transition to Mutual of Omaha to see if you can get that favorable indicator and possibly get this application approved with non-tobacco rates. So any questions about Mutual of Omaha? So with them, here are their health questions. I'll let you see it on a bigger screen. So one moment. All right, so I'm going to go here again. I'm going to type in Mutual of Omaha, or you can even do MU and see that'll pop up as well. And then we scroll down and we're going to look at the living promise. But before I look at the application, I saw this, and this is great. So anytime you cannot your client can't figure out how to do the HIPAA authorization, you can go here and click on these screens and you can walk your client through the HIPAA process. And then there's a DocuSign instructional PDF too that I have that when it's the second signature, that part to me is more complicated for a client. You can walk them through that too. So if you need those instructions, I'll put it in the chat for the second part. So right now I'm going to scroll down here. I'm going to look for the paper application, Living Promise. And here are their health questions down here. So in part 1, here are their knockout questions. So if you have to answer yes to questions, let's see, 1 through 5, these will be all knockout questions where it be an automatic decline. And then in this section, if they have to answer yes, then it would be graded. So one of the things that I noticed that would cause an automatic decline is right here where it says, do you require assistance or activities with activities of daily living, which I get. But right here, control of bowel or bladder problems. So a lot of our clients, the older we get, you have less control of your bowels, your bladder. And if someone has to answer yes to this question, it's an automatic decline. Whereas other carriers, they don't even ask that question. It's more about the activities of daily living, which is bathing, dressing, eating, toileting, getting in or out of a bed or chair, and taking your medications. That's ADLs. So that's Mutual of Omaha. Also, keep in mind, just because you get that favorable and you're able to do the application all the way through, you get a policy number, that does not mean it has been approved. It still goes to underwriting. And even though it comes back when you first did the application as favorable, they still have it go to an underwriter to look at it with human eyes before it is actually issued. Every now and then you'll get an automatic approval where the same day you get that approval, but sometimes you got to wait a day or two before you get that automatic approval. So I'll always tell your clients that now it's going to the home office for a final decision, and that could take up to 2 days for a final decision. But just know I will reach out to you once I get that final decision. So any questions regarding Mutual of Omaha? All right. So I figured we'll do a little homework. We're going to go over now how Insurance Toolkits does their quoting. So pretty much what they do is all those applications, they put it in. All those health questions, they put it in. And based on what you put into their quoting software, that's how you get those outcomes. So that's the reason why sometimes it's a good idea to look at paper applications. So if something doesn't look right in the outcome in Insurance Toolkits, then you can say, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. So for example, and you guys can see my Insurance Toolkits, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. So for example, if you notice, I'm trying to get quotes for $10,000 on a woman in Georgia whose date of birth is March 18th, 1956. She's 5 feet 2 inches, 146 pounds. She's a non-smoker and she has a bank draft. I'm going to put in Narcan. I'm going to click on that. And the only thing I can use is put it for alcohol or drug abuse. So I'm going to put that. And then, is this medication being currently prescribed due to past history of drug abuse? And I'm going to put no. Has there been any abuse related to narcotics without a prescription? No. And then I'm going to put in to see my results. And if you see here, Mutual of Omaha is graded, Corebridge, but all the way down here, we got American Amicable as ROP. So again, this is a little different than what the outcome can be. So this is why you got to know your applications because if you plug this in and you rely strictly on insurance toolkits, then it's going to come up and you're going to say, okay, let me quote them, see if I can do a Mutual of Omaha because that's the best rates, and just tell them about Graded. And then I come behind you, talk to them, ask a bunch of open-ended questions about their health and prescriptions, ask them about that Narcan and their pain medicine. I will try to apply them for immediate coverage with American Amicable. If it pops up with the Narcan, I'm going to put the notes in there, and 9 times out of 10, I'll get an approval. And now, instead of that $10,000 of coverage being $60 with a waiting period, now I can get them $57.66, which isn't that big of a difference with the rates, but I can get them immediate day one coverage. I'm going to sell them on that because that's where peace of mind is, and that's important for your client. I will sell them on that, and then they'll drop your policy, and then now I've taken your client. So it's really important that you know the niches, create yourself your own little cheat sheet, so that way you can kind of see when something doesn't look right when you're working with insurance toolkits, to kind of review your cheat sheets to see if it matches up. So let's go back to this one. And I'm just going to slide this over to see, hopefully you can see it. And then I'll move it out of the way. All right, so can you see this example here? We have, this one has multiple chronic conditions, 72-year-old female. She's a diabetic on insulin. She has high blood pressure. She's a smoker. She has COPD, 5 feet 10 inches, 200 pounds, and she's not on any oxygen, but she is taking Spiriva and albuterol for COPD, and she's taking insulin with gabapentin. So let me just tell you about gabapentin and Lyrica and pregabalin. That's typically for diabetic neuropathy, but it can be for pain, fibromyalgia, and if your client is a diabetic, even though they are not have not been diagnosed by a doctor with neuropathy, but they're taking gabapentin for fibromyalgia, guess what? The insurance company is automatically going to assume they have diabetic neuropathy. So I would put that in, even though the client says they haven't. I'm going to plug that into insurance toolkits as someone who has diabetic neuropathy, so I can get a better result. So sometimes you got to do that. And I'm not going to argue with the client and say, are you sure that gabapentin is not for neuropathy? Because typically when you're a diabetic and you have gabapentin along with it, it's for neuropathy. It could be for pain. It could be temporarily for pain. I'm still going to plug this in as neuropathy in insurance toolkits because that's what the insurance company is going to assume if they are taking any type of diabetic medicine and gabapentin. All right, so let's see if we can get everybody to open up their insurance toolkits. We'll go over 3 cases. So when I'm working with insurance toolkits, I want to always make sure I don't leave out any steps here on the left side, because you'll be amazed if you forget to click on, for example, if someone is on Direct Express and you leave it on bank draft, then you quote an insurance carrier that doesn't take Direct Express cards. Now you're going to run into an issue. So you want to make sure, get into the habit of clicking on each one of these fields. So what I do is I automatically default to $10,000. I automatically leave this to level. And then I always make sure to have the right sex, male or female. And I always make sure to go down the list and drop down to the correct state. I just get in the habit to go look at each one of these fields and click on them appropriately so I don't forget anything. Then I get their height and weight, and let's say they're 5 feet 11, 146 pounds. They're real skinny. Now let's do the case. My apologies. So with this lady, she's 72. So we got to add 3 years there. So I think that's 53. Yep. And then she is 5 feet 10, 200 pounds. She is a smoker. And then she has a bank draft. I'm going to key in her prescriptions. So I'm going to go down here, and she said that she takes Lantus. And then what pops up and says, okay, Lantus, I'm automatically going to assume it's for no complications. And then I'm going to keep the check mark as currently. And then if you want to ask, you can, about how many units she's taking a day. With most final expense carriers that we work with, that's not an issue. It used to be, but not anymore. And then for this uncontrolled diabetes, because she's taking her prescriptions, I'm automatically going to say that uncontrolled, so I can get past this part. I'm going to put uncontrolled diabetes in the last 10 years is no. A1C less than 8%, I'm automatically going to say yes, because that's not a requirement for our carriers that we work with. Because if you say yes, no, that the A1C was less than 8%, my apologies, I mean yes, you're going to wind up going through a rabbit hole of all these extra questions, okay? So you don't want to do that. And then we have Novolog, right? Yeah, Novolog. Both of these are insulin. I'm automatically going to put currently taking, unsure, because again, this doesn't make that much of a difference with our carriers that we work with. This one too doesn't make that much of a difference. So uncontrolled, nope, because she's taken her prescription. She has them there. Was the prospect's most recent A1C less than 8%? If I put no, they've updated the system. So before they used to have it where, is it between 8 to 10%? Is it between 11 to 12%? And it was just the non-ending cipher. So I always just say they kept it at under 8%. Now, look at this one for gabapentin. So I select gabapentin, but she didn't say it was for neuropathy. She said it was for, let's say, restless leg. Okay, so I'll click on that. She's currently taking it. And then it automatically is going to come up with diabetic neuropathy. I'm going to leave this on because this is what most insurance companies are going to assume she's taking the gabapentin and the insulin for. So I'm going to leave this as the last day of treatment as today. First day of diagnosis, I'm just going to leave it like that. Insulin use, yes. Uncontrolled diabetes in the last 2 years, no. A1C less than 8%, yes. Then I go to the next one. Now we got Lasix. Lasix is one of those prescriptions that could be used for multiple reasons. So I'm going to ask her what she's taking it for. And she, 9 times out of 10, because she hasn't had any heart issue, she's going to tell me it's for swelling, and that's fluid retention. So I'm going to click on that, or she may even tell me it's for blood pressure. But let's say it's for fluid retention. She's currently taking it. Then she'll probably tell you the milligrams. You can get it. It's not required. And then they're going to ask, is this water retention due to the prospect's organs? So let's say it's congestive heart failure. Then you have to answer yes, and they're going to automatically assume this is for congestive heart failure versus just for to prevent swelling. So I select no there. Then I'm going to put in metoprolol for blood pressure. And she says it's for blood pressure. I'm going to click on the one for control because most of the time when people are using Blood pressure medicines, it's under control. So I'm going to put that. She's compliant. And then we got Spiriva. And Spiriva is a inhaler typically for COPD or chronic bronchitis. So I'm going to select COPD. Then I'm going to ask her when she was diagnosed. Let's say she says, oh, it was a couple of years ago. I'm automatically going to ask, because you'll be amazed. People always think it's 2 or 3 years ago, but it was actually longer. So I will say, was it before COVID lockdown or after? Most people remember about COVID lockdown. And for reference, COVID lockdown happened March of 2020. That was over 5 years ago. So we're about 5.5 years out. And you'll be amazed. A lot of people will say, oh, it was way before COVID lockdown. So that was over 5 years ago. But they're telling you 2 years ago. So you want to ask that follow-up question, because that 2 years or a couple of years could make a big difference in getting something approved as immediate. So what I'm going to do here, they said, oh, that was way before COVID. I'm automatically going to default this to 2019 because it's better to have less time than more in this case, just to make sure I get the best result. And then we have atorvastatin for cholesterol, which that usually doesn't make a big difference. And then she's also taking albuterol. Now, albuterol is one of those prescriptions that could be used for allergies, chronic or mild asthma, chronic bronchitis, or COPD. So if you need to understand which is chronic and which is mild, if someone has to take their inhaler every day, that is considered chronic. If they only have to take it as needed, then it's, or for emergencies only, now that's considered mild asthma. So I'm going to put this for COPD. Diagnosis again was before COVID. And they ask about a nebulizer. You can ask them about it, but again, it doesn't make that much of a difference. A nebulizer is for people who have more issues with their asthma, bronchitis, or COPD. All right, so let's see what our results are down here. I'm going to click on Get Quote. Now, we can do Sika, or we can do Transamerica, and both of these will give you day one immediate coverage. My formula for deciding to do Sika versus Transamerica, because I always default for Transamerica because they will give you more commission than Sika. However, if there is more than a $10 difference with the premiums, 10 or more dollars, then I'm automatically going to default to Sika. In this case, there is a $20 difference, so I'm automatically going to do Sika. Thankfully, they do Social Security billing. So every one of these with the stars offers Social Security billing, with the exception of Guaranteed Trust Life. It is not true Social Security billing. The way Social Security billing works is if you select the 3rd of the month or a particular Wednesday, then typically that morning you will see that money actually post to their account. Whereas with GTL, you can select the 2nd, 3rd, or 4th Wednesday, but it doesn't post. They actually send the request to the bank on that day, and then your client actually sees it post 2 to 3 business days later. So that's the reason why with GTL, I don't even think about that star. But all the other ones, when you see a star, that's letting you know that's true Social Security billing. Now, if you look over here, it's letting you know, be forewarned, that health question with 6D. So let's go over and take a look at the question on 6D, and then we'll wrap it up because I see it's a little after 2:05. But I'm going to go here and I'm going to end on this because this is really important. Okay, so here's Sika. I'm going to take a look at their paper application. Here's their sample application. I go and take a look at the health questions. And this 6 right here, 6D, this is what I always tell my client. This question is a little tricky, so listen carefully. In the last 10 years, and I start reading it off. So basically what they are asking is, in the last 10 years, have you been diagnosed for which you have not been treated by a doctor or have not taken your medication for the following? If they are taking their medication and following their doctor's prescribed treatment plan, even though it may be uncontrolled diabetes or high blood pressure, they can answer no to this question and still get immediate coverage. So I want to make sure you guys are asking that question and making sure you explain it to your client, because a lot of times people don't know how to answer that question. So one moment. I didn't want you guys to hear me cough. I had a little phlegm in my throat, sorry. All right, so even if someone has kidney disease, as long as they're not on the transplant list and as long as they're not on dialysis, they could qualify for immediate standard coverage with Sika. Now, here in section D, it asks about having any type of nervous disorder or a mental disorder. If your client is taking any type of depression or anxiety medicine, this will come back as declined. So you want to always ask your client if they've ever taken any prescriptions for anxiety, depression, and if they have before, you may want to use another carrier, because Citizens Insurance Company, they look strong on those mental disorders or mental prescriptions, even though they're just not a big deal for a lot of people. They will decline that application, even if they're on duloxetine for depression, escitalopram, all of that will decline the application. All right. So we are over time, so my apologies. I can go through all of these underwriting topics and niches with the carriers for hours, but we got to get on the phones to make money. So we will end this lunch and learn here. If you guys want any other topics, feel free and let Brian or Kim know, or post it in our chat. Or even under the comments section in the lunch and learn section, and then we can always, do some training on that. So thank you guys for joining. I'm going to stop my screen share. Do you guys have any questions before we end the lunch and learn?